Boom. We are alive, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. One of the places you can find out the most interesting of things, and usually quite early on in the process of finding them, Steel and the Arcane Bear. We've got a fun guest for you today. We have Tommy Johnson, founder of PsyOptions. So we're just going to jump right into it. Tommy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you. You know, options is often an overlooked idea, at least in the specifics of the financial sector. Everybody wants some type of optional capability in almost every aspect of their life, but how it functions specifically in the finance market, I think, is almost a Wizard of Oz moment for a lot of people. So, tell us a little bit about Psi options.
Yeah, certainly. So PsyOptions actually started out as a hackathon project, but before it was an actual hackathon project, um, it came from my brother and I. We're not traditional finance people. We're software engineers. We wanted to automate a options trading strategy and called our brokerage for API access. And when they denied us, we thought, why don't we just build options into the blockchain? And you mentioned that options can be, complex and maybe hard for others to understand what's actually going on. And for us, it was, well, we need to figure out how we can break down what an option is in the finance world to something we can translate into code. So we really took what is an option and boil it down to, if I was going to hand someone a physical contract, legal contract, giving them an option, what would that be? And so an option, for those who don't know, is you're giving someone the right but not the obligation to exchange two assets at an agreed upon price up until a point in time. And there's a couple different variations of options. You have American style options, European style options. I don't know if we want to get that deep, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, fantastic. So, I'm a big fan of Nassim Taleb's books, and I try to explain things more conceptually driven than technically here. So that was a great explanation. You could get lost in the weeds of trying to explain the way, let's say, volatility and time work as a function together throughout these parameters within a contract, and that's probably about into the weeds, which I'd like to get into just for fun as well, to see what type of possibilities the tech stack brings to these ideas. But tell us a little bit about this journey from hackathon to where we are now.
Oh man, I mean, it's been crazy. It's been incredible. It's been stressful. It's been annoying. I mean, so I almost want to write a book on this whole process, like going from a hackathon project almost a year ago now, to we just launched our token on FTX and Gate last week. And going from point A to point B was just a wild road with lots of turns, lots of loopholes, lots of, things that are just, you had no idea you had to deal with when you're a developer just picking up a project. So we won the Solana Serum DeFi hackathon last February and March. And after that, there was a lot of investors reaching out saying, hey, are you guys raising for this? Are you guys taking on funding? And it's like, well, no, this was just like a hackathon project. Like, we don't have any infrastructure set up. And someone introduced us to some lawyers. So we started talking to some lawyers about how do we set it up for a future token. And so we can take some fundraising from these investors that are interested in working with us. And there's just, it's a long process. Lawyers in the crypto space are bogged down because there's not many of them. And the really good ones are really expensive and getting clients left and right every day. So it was about like 5.5 months of doing a lot of legal work. In the meantime, we were still managing day jobs and building PsyOptions in our spare time. In September, we actually closed our first round of funding. So that was just an interesting process from the legal standpoint, getting a couple entities set up, onshore, offshore, all of the things that you have to do to make sure that you're setting up for a future DAO and decentralization and a future token, hiring people globally. So there's just a lot that goes into getting to the point where you have a token and you can say you're moving towards full decentralization. There's the biggest pain point, I think, is legal that we've seen. And I think it's different. That's a tough one because it's different for everyone depending on where they are in the world. But then it's also been an interesting journey hiring up, finding contributors. You have a lot of people that are super interested in the crypto space. So it's been really fun to connect with people from all over the world that want to contribute to young new project and see the vision and where it's going and are interested in getting involved.
Boom, fantastic, Tommy. So I like this story. The legal conversation is always an interesting one too, and just business development in general. I don't think a lot of people account for, because of this, how much of it is done through these abstract mediums of like, okay, well, where are we launching entities from, et cetera, as a whole, because of that regulation conversation, because there is gray area. And usually what you need is someone to sign off and go, yes, to the best of my knowledge, this isn't breaking the law. That's really what you're looking for, someone of a high caliber to say. That's kind of the trick there. So my next thought and question here is, you've built, you're building on Solana. Tell us what something like an options feature will bring to the market at these early stages, and what are the upside benefit? Again, I don't think a lot of people would trade options. They're most likely not to buy them. I think I think they make great insurance strategies if you are holding positions effectively. But tell us a little bit why you think there's a good product market fit, especially in the blockchain world.
Yeah, I mean, so product market fit is, tough to say, like, are we there yet with our current product? I would say we're not at product market fit at the moment. And there's a few reasons for that. One, there's, from conversations I've had with people interested in getting involved in PsyOptions and advisors and things like that, there's a lot of TradFi institutions that still haven't come in yet, but they're interested in paying attention, and they'll probably be getting more up to speed in the second half of 2022 and maybe playing more into DeFi in 2023. And so there's definitely a lot of players on the sidelines that don't have the infrastructure set up, but are paying attention and are working towards that. And then the other thing is, like, all the current people that are in DeFi right now, so the current addressable market, not a lot of them understand options. It's an extremely complex financial instrument. When you take something like a perpetual future, it's fairly simple. Liquidity is concentrated to one order book, versus options. You have many different strikes over many different expirations. So you just, you're permutating the liquidity significantly, and fragmenting it, excuse me. So that's like one complex thing that, like, we've had to overcome. And then it's also, we see a lot of people jump into the community saying, oh, it's my first time trading options. And we're like, oh gosh, here we go. All right, we need a lot more educational material. Like, we need, like, here's some, check out Robinhood's knowledge base, check out these other places that have done a really good job with education. We're still very much in the building infrastructure, improving capital efficiency. So we haven't focused on, like, building out our own educational materials, but we're working with a few potential partners to, like, kind of really round that out. So that's been, like, extremely interesting. And I think one of the biggest things in the short term that we're going to see is we have a lot of these decentralized option vaults. You saw QCP kind of do a great write-up on DOVs, as we abbreviate them, about how we can create structured products and abstract the complexity of options away from some end users, where you can give them a pool for them to deposit their assets into and gain some yield or hedge some risk, depending on the strategy that's going on underneath. And that's what's, I think, going to broaden the decentralized or just crypto options market in general, is abstracting a lot of these complexities away with structured products that provide certain services, or certain, they're used for certain things, right? Yield generation, impermanent loss hedging,
Black swan hedges.
Black swan hedges. Yeah, there you go. That's a winner.
Yeah, this is always one of the fun parts about the options story. I thought was that a lot of people look at markets as rather chaotic and random, and they're in fact not. They're closely related to human nature. And when an option is most valuable, it's when there's chaotic environments, usually to the up, or when there's a large amount of volatility, which is so you're using these more complex pieces of how these contracts work, which is probably what most people expect to show up, like, with a vanilla version of options. Like, how do I just buy and sell a particular option instead of all this variability? Do you feel that these are going to be, it's more likely to be larger institutions that would adopt hedging strategies with options as compared, or do you think that the market is large enough? I mean, it was kind of one of the interesting side points around the Reddit forums, just seeing that there are so many capable, well understood entrepreneurs and traders or investors out there. Do you feel that you're getting a hotter signal from the enterprise or from what was traditionally called the retail market?
I think we're definitely getting right now like a lot more interest and excitement on the infrastructure layer side from like institutions and professional traders that are doing this every day, which is why we think like in the short term the decentralized option vaults, that kind of abstract strategies, is beneficial for the like retail participants that we're seeing getting heavily involved into DeFi. One of the biggest things is, you know, rolling your positions, and if you want to keep on a hedge, right, checking back, you know, managing those week to week, day to day, depending on like what kind of hedge or what kind of, you know, position you're looking to hold, right? And we see that with a lot of retail, that they tend to forget, or they tend to not, you know, forget to like hedge their position one time or a few times, and it's tough when they're used to just buying and holding on spot. I think that's going to change over time. But it's really interesting when you have these perpetual futures contracts in crypto, where you know, this, which is pretty native to crypto. So there's other ways to get certain hedges and exposure that you don't really have in TradFi. And so it's a more interesting dynamic than just options, you know, from TradFi in DeFi, right?
Yeah, this was what I thought was one of the interesting potentials, was the unknown of the capabilities of these things when you put them in a more open context. You know, nature is such a wonderful confounder of an evolution of things because it provides opportunity. It's not a closed loop. There's entropy within the system effectively. So, you know, I'd be fascinated to see how these start to work together. One of my thoughts and kind of questions was, how do options and the NFT world potentially connect? You know, these what would, or options and the art world, what would have seemingly been disconnected asset classes in the past now being moved online. How do options and like NFT art work?
Yeah. So, I mean, our first protocol that we wrote, the Psy American protocol, is what we're kind of branding it now, that we're spinning out a few more protocols over the next month or two. Handles the ability to actually write options, whether that's a call or a put on NFTs, just because it's built in such like a primitive manner. You can spin up a put or a call on it. You know, is there going to be someone to take the other side? Is there liquidity, right? That's the difficult question, because, you know, NFTs are unique addresses. So if you want to write a call and give someone the right but not the obligation to buy your NFT at some higher price in the future, you could spin that up, but is there going to be someone on the other side of that? But so if you're someone who knows there's someone interested in your NFT, you could literally make that deal off chain and execute it on chain, or, you know, bring that relationship on chain. So that way these contracts are all just handled programmatically, and you don't have to get any lawyers involved. I think that's like the most interesting case for these NFTs. The other thing that we were like really just having fun with is you can also get insurance on your NFT. You mentioned that options can be seen as a form of insurance, but you could get someone to, if you had an insurance provider that was willing to take the other side, they could write a put for your NFT and then sell you that put at a premium. And what they're doing is holding the put option gives you the right to sell something at an agreed upon price. So they're basically giving you a floor price for your NFT for some premium. And they might write this so there's a time frame of a week, a month, whatever, depending on the time frame. You obviously have the theta, for those who know options, the value of time. So the longer the duration that option is available, the more expensive your insurance is going to be. But you can essentially get a floor price insurance using these protocols together.
Yeah, this is one of the interesting parts that I'd started to notice, is that it's the aggregate of a bunch of these DeFi primitives. You know, the play to earn sector has been fascinating to me because it's an on-ramp to financial services and an on-ramp to, this is why I think the conversation around NFTs is so interesting, is because it to some degree represents digital ownership of the growth of an ecosystem of any kind. I mean, I could imagine if Twitter had started doing something like this in its early days, what that might look like going forward. So I'm really fascinated to see how some of these pieces might start working together. Like, are we going to see options in the in the video game market now for game players? You know, just this unique
Yeah.
kind of amalgamation of things that you didn't think, or you wouldn't think normally fit together here. So, you know, you guys just recently had a token launch on GateFi and FTX, as you had mentioned. What are the next 6 to 12 months of roadmap look like going forward? And how do the Psy options token function within that ecosystem?
Yeah, so I mean that was like an incredible milestone to get that done. It's a lot of work, you know, as we mentioned, like legal and everything in between to get to a token launch. So it really can be distracting from like the product standpoint, and being able to just completely focus on growing the team and expanding the suite of products. So the next like 6 to 12 months is just product. You know, our business side will be focusing on like the governance infrastructure and leveraging a lot of the open source governance infrastructure that already exists on Solana. So that way the token, you know, has this great utility where it can shape itself. You know, with the legal, we have to be very careful of like locking in, this is exactly what it does and how it's going to work. And, you know, because there's so many things that it could do. It's just, you know, when you're launching something, you can't really set that in stone. And so what we took the position of, this is a governance token. We're going to put most of the tokens in the governance treasury, and these tokens that are circulating can actually vote about how that supply is controlled and used. So if we want to, you know, if someone want to do a liquidity mining program and stuff, that can all be done through a proposal on chain, voting with the existing Psy tokens to take some more Psy tokens and run certain liquidity mining.
Does that also include the vaults then as well?
Yeah, so yeah, we're going to be launching our own vaults. I mean, here's some alphas that we just brought another team under the Psy DAO that is going to be running option vaults for Psy and the Psy DAO. And so the Psy token can be used for liquidity mining for incentives for people just depositing into these vaults. I think the vaults, I think like from my point of view, like that's a really smart use case because there's clear product market fit on these vaults and these structured products and strategies that make it really easy for everyone to participate. So it's a lot easier to kind of reward the masses and get the community involved from that perspective, while we still work on product market fit and get more institutions and traders running on the you know, base layer that is the DEX and has all the liquidity. But so, yeah, I mean, from like, to just go back to and highlight the roadmap, Q1 for us is all about the vaults, bringing this new team under the Psy DAO. You'll see some press going out in the next like week or two on that. And really boosting the TVL there, because once we have a lot of TVL there, it makes a nice flywheel to increase liquidity on the order books in the underlying protocols, as those vaults are run through those same order books that are being traded on the interface. So anyone could come in and take the other side of these structured products. And then we'll be building out, and we're still working on improving capital efficiency. So we have an under collateralized European style protocol that we'll be hopefully going to DevNet by the end of Q1 with, and mainnet in Q2, depending on how like the testing goes. And then we'll eventually move the vaults to be working on top of that, so we can get a lot more leveraged products. Traders can have portfolio margining in there, you know, when they're using that and all that. So that's kind of the short term. It's hard to go beyond 6 months in this world.
Okay, well here's a side question to put a fork in the road for the thought. One of the things I liked about Aavegotchi was kind of their gamification of DeFi and the way they exemplified the use case of a collateralized loan through kind of NFT process. I thought they did a really unique job with this. When you're going down this line of thinking and the development of the roadmap, Is it a better market fit to build a clear community-driven product with things like a front-facing NFT for like collateralized version of each of these? I don't know how you'd integrate it, or is it better off going strictly on the capital efficiency into the product and having it where it kind of it could show up as just a plug-in piece of a wallet effectively? Do you think that this ends up as a piece in a larger whole, or is it a standalone product? Yeah, that's maybe a better way to say it.
I think like the core team is really focused on like the piece and the infrastructure layer. The NFT stuff can definitely be built on top, but that's like not our focus at the moment. But that's why we love all these ideas, and it's really fun to like, poke around these ideas. And so we sponsor almost every hackathon that like gets brought our way, any DeFi Solana related hackathon, because then we just have this like bounty board and these other like out there ideas. And it's like, hey, if you develop this, like, we'll bring you in or we'll fund it or something like that. Right. Because we're only so many people, and it's, as we've learned through this journey, it's not easy to like scale teams. It's not like it's instantaneous, right? It takes time. There's interviews and things like that. But if someone can come in from a hackathon and they can prove that they can build, like we want to reward those people, get them involved, because they clearly can pick up on some sparse documentation and get up and running, right? It's ultimately how we got started. So that they're killer devs and can think for themselves. And so we really want to create this ecosystem where others can, build out these ideas on top of what we've already built and our roadmap, and really expand the ecosystem.
Yes, is a great business acumen in general is to, if you see something that you can fix and no one's fixed it, you should basically fix it and then tell the people who needed it fixed, and then they'll usually hire you.
Yes, exactly.
In my experience, at least. It's always a weird one. Like, oh, you should pay me first. Like, well, sometimes if you just do the work, you'll find out you end up in the position you wanted.
Yep.
The hackathons are always an interesting one. I'm not a coder or developer. And I know that Solana has some advantages in terms of building on, you said you and your brother are developers. What does that background in developing look like?
Yeah, so we started a company, I don't know, 9 years ago or something like that. And that's kind of what dropped us into software engineering. We were both studying electrical engineering. I did like a brief stint as a hardware engineer. And then through my entrepreneurial efforts, kind of just jumped right into software, doing a lot of web development, like Ruby on Rails. Been kind of always an entrepreneurial, hacking out and things. So built some mobile apps, built some browser extensions, built a lot of backend infrastructure. So I've written in many different languages, done some Solidity development, all that kind of stuff. But primarily I was a web dev for a long time. And my brother Taylor's in a similar boat. He's been in the crypto space full time for the last 4 years though. So that's why I've always been heavily involved in the crypto space. But yeah, that's kind of the gist. I mean, once Solana came out, it was like, let's just like poke around here, jump in, read their documentation and figure out how to build here.
Was that a choice because it was written in Rust?
No, actually the biggest reason why we jumped into Solana, well, first of all, caught wind of like Solana before mainnet, and was reading like their pitch decks and their documentation. And I'd been priced out of things on ETH, or just kind of turned off from interacting with ETH when I'm paying, $50 for a transaction. And so reading about what they were proposing in theory was like, okay, if they can, come close to this, then it's going to be incredible. And it's going to, alleviate all the pain points that like I'm currently having. And so why not like pay attention and start building here? And then got connected with FTX. So my brother used to work at Blockfolio, which was bought by FTX, and was actually surfing with someone from FTX, and he's an advisor at Serum. And this was like shortly after Serum had launched. So we were talking about all the Serum development and the order books on chain. And that kind of like put it into my mind of like, there's a lot of infrastructure going on here. It's extremely early. This is, time to double down on Solana and like really start developing here. And so that's kind of what really pushed us over the edge to jump all in.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a great choice. Well, Tommy, it's been great chatting today. Is there, I know just in general, all the social links for PsyOptions will be down below. I guess just, yeah, we pretty much covered everything. Is there anything that you want to go over before we close out today's chat?
No, I think the biggest thing is we have a lot coming on, coming out in the next like few weeks. Q1 is going to be a big one for us. The token launch was just one milestone, checking the box. It allows us to really double down, focus on the product, growing the team, and leveraging the token to grow the community, get people involved in voting in the next stages of PsyOptions. So I think that's, the biggest thing for people to take away is definitely pay attention over the next 1 to 2 quarters. There's going to be a lot coming out.
Awesome. Yeah, I like option. I like this idea of having options within the ecosystem, especially the way I feel it's going to intermingle with other parts of the future ecosystem too. I think there's something valuable there we just maybe don't even understand yet. So it's exciting to join along in the journey here together. Tommy, thanks for jumping on the show. For those of you that are going to and want to follow PsyOptions, the links are down below. I suggest doing that instead of asking me for any updates, because they're way better at actually doing those things. So join their Discord, their Telegram, and follow along. Again, I think the important thing here, and Tommy, for those if you don't know, like we're big into venture capital because the potential of asymmetry, the kind of a philosophical background with risk because of that asymmetry as well. So super excited about ideas that might bring some stability in terms of the way we manage some of that risk with these very volatile positions too. I think options is a great way to ensure positions if there's the order book for it. So it'll be going to be cool to see how that story turns out. Give us a thumbs up, ladies and gentlemen. Leave your thoughts, comments, questions down below. Thank you, Tommy. Great chatting today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Great.